Okay, so here behind me is my French cleat wall that I just completed with a bunch of different tool holders. Now, if you've seen any of the clips from my previous videos, you know that organization is not my strong suit. This area was a disaster before this. And if you're anything like me, maybe it's just me, but I get so excited about new projects, about starting new projects, and I just have a million different ideas going on in my head all at once that I don't want to worry about stuff like organization. I mean, who cares if it's a little bit messy, right?
Ponder the error of your ways.
After living with a disaster area in the back for about 2 years, I finally decided, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm gonna get organized. I'm gonna do what everybody else does and just build a French cleat wall. Do it simple. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Boom, there you have it. I just went with huge French cleats. I did like 4 inches. That way I don't have to worry if the back runs into the next one. I just cut 2 huge French cleats and then one down there. And then I built a bunch of tool holders to hold everything in place. And if there's one thing that I found is having a home for every single tool makes a huge difference. Before I had these metal janky tool holders with a ton of different holes and slots and stuff, and I would stick one thing here, one thing there, one thing there, and then everything. Even when I put it back in order, it never even looked like it was clean because all the tools would hang crooked and it was hard to look at and quite honestly hard to work with. So with that said, I don't go through a detailed build of every tool holder, but if you have any questions on any specific one, I would be happy to answer you back in the comments. I basically just did the fastest thing I could do so I could get all this stuff up on the wall where I could see it, where I could put it back really quickly. And also, while I was at it, I decided to repaint this bench. This thing is made out of horrid MDF. It was here when I got here, so I didn't want to replace the actual tabletop, but I just stuck a piece of plywood on here because this part was all curvy turny, and slapped a new coat of paint on it, and I think it looks a lot better and is definitely going to be a lot nicer to work with. Okay, so here I'm just ripping down some strips that are going to be the French cleats, and it's basically just a strip of plywood with a 45-degree angle on it, and using the circular saw to cut it to length, and then setting it up on a couple of blocks for spacing. And then I screwed in one side, put the level on top, and then screwed in the other side. So I just started making tool holders because I wanted to get everything off of the work area as fast as I could. This was actually an existing drill bit holder that I had, and I just slapped a French cleat on it. I actually ended up remaking this out of some old oak that I had, and I think it's a little bit nicer. I made 3 tiers. I'll show it at the end of the video, but anyway, at first I was gluing and screwing the boards together, but then I opted for just screwing the French cleat on and the different boards and not even using glue. I opted for just some really simple designs and try to make the majority out of plywood. I think I'll remake some of these tool holders out of some nicer scrap that I have laying around, but for this project I just wanted to make a bunch of tool holders as quickly as I could. So here I'm cutting down another strip with some help from my wonderful wife and just marking some sizes. And again, most of these tool holders were based on the tools I actually had and used the most often. So I tried to make everything as custom as I could. That way the tools go back to the exact same spot every single time, and I'm not putting things in random spots. So basically I just tried to have it so that everything has a dedicated home, and it makes it a lot easier to clean up. So a good trick is, if you want some clean holes, is to actually drill in reverse and then drill about halfway down, and then I flip the board and finish the hole from the other side. This was a really poor quality plywood that still was getting a little bit of tear out, but generally if you're working with a little bit of a nicer wood, this helps avoid a lot of the tear out. So I have some of those right angle clamps that keep everything square when I'm gluing up, so I decided to make some dedicated holders for those. And what I did was I roughly laid them out and then transferred the middle of that wood piece onto the back, clamped everything down, and then attached it with screws from the back. I think it would have been nice to have a few kind of these F-style clamps, or just clamps with deep throats that are quick release, so it didn't take as long to clamp these down. But these are just the cheap Harbor Freight F-style clamps. But I actually really like them, and I feel like for the money they do what they're supposed to do, which is clamp things, and so far they've actually worked out really nicely for me. So I also tried to design these tool holders so that like tools would be in close proximity to each other. So this is basically all of my measuring tools that I use on a consistent basis. This will be a small machinist square. The hole is for a marking gauge. The square is for a sliding bevel. And then there's two slots, one for a speed square and then one for a starret square that I also use consistently. This way, when I'm looking for tools, everything that is similar is in one spot, and it makes it really easy to find and put back. So at first when I started this project, I thought of just doing that lower level where you see the French Cleat. But then I thought to myself, why would I do that? This is just stupid. Let's just do the whole thing. And I also ended up pre-finishing this board, whereas the other board I end up finishing it later. I think I was just anxious to get it up, but if I were to do it over again, I would definitely apply finish before I mounted it. Makes it a lot easier. So here I'm just cutting some small pieces that are going to be some saw holders, and this is going to be my fret saw holder, which I thought, you know what, if I'm going to make a fret saw holder, I might as well use the fret saw. So I just drew some shapes that basically mimic the contour of the saw. And here I think I'm using some scrap pieces of walnut. This is just for all my little pliers and doodads. And I just had some triangular walnut cutoffs that I basically just hammered in there. Here I'm using that same trick where I go in reverse and then I go in the forward drilling position, just trying to minimize the tear out that I was getting on this plywood. Home Depot lately has had a really poor selection of plywood, and this was the only stuff that was available at the time, and really it's a pretty bad quality. It's quite a bit lighter than the typical pine plywood that I get. And here I am making a tool holder for my planes, and I'm just ripping down, or I should say resawing, this 4x4 that I had laying around, and gluing up a panel, and I'm going to make a little holder for all of my planes. And I'm just cleaning out the dado with the chisel since I don't have a flat saw blade on my table saw. It leaves some ridges, and it's easier to just clean it out with the chisel than running it through the table saw a million times. I probably spent more time on this tool holder than I did any of the other ones, just because I didn't really want to remake this one. I think for some of the really fast plywood holders that I made, I'll probably remake them when I have some spare scrap wood. But for this one, I took my time a little bit and used some half lap joints. Here I'm just marking it with the sliding bevel, and it's kind of a design I just came up with just based on how many planes I have. I didn't put my number 7 in this holder because it would make the holder quite a bit larger than it would need to be for the other planes, so I just did it based on my shoulder plane, my number 3, number 4, and number 5 plane. I do love the efficiency I get when I'm using the table saw and things like the bandsaw, but boy, I really love the times when I can just work with hand tools and just hearing the sound of a chisel and the plane. For me, it's really, I think, one of the best aspects of woodworking is just being able to slow down a little bit, use hand tools, and really kind of hear the sound of the wood and really feel kind of all the texture and the grain. I mean, I'm just using cheap Doug fir here, but it's still nice to build something with hand tools and not rely only on the power tools for all my builds. And I also like that I can do more of these builds since I am working in a garage later in the evening. That way I don't have to be as concerned about making a ton of noise. So as I was repainting, I realized that I really didn't like that particle board edge, so I decided to trim that off and just put a piece of plywood over that. That way I get a nice clean surface, nice clean edge, and I don't have to look at the chipped up particle board. So I ended up cutting that off, screwing a piece of plywood on, and then just painting that. So this project took me probably several working days of actual work. I took a little 10-day trip to Texas in the middle of this, but then when I came back, I ended up finishing it. Some of the tool holders, the drill bit holder, I actually built after I shot this video. You'll probably see it in some of my next videos coming up, but overall, I'm really excited about this addition to my workshop. I feel like this is going to make working and cleaning so much easier to put tools back in their home. And yeah, overall, I'm just really excited. I think I might add some French cleats somewhere else in the shop. I feel like they're a really great way to utilize storage space, and I really like the fact that I can move tools around. I kind of experimented with different arrangements, and yeah, it's really great that everything is modular and you can always add and subtract tool holders, remake them without having to change your whole wall. If you like this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe. If you have any questions on any specific tool builds or any of the tools or things that I'm working with, please leave it below in the comments. If you have some ideas on how I could optimize this space even more, let me know in the comments. Any suggestions are always appreciated. And with that, have a great day and talk to you soon.